Alright, let's move on to the next deck, which was also, well, all of these decks are presents from people who are supporters and friends of mine. This deck is called the Fountain Tarot. It's a beautiful, iridescent, rainbowy, just gorgeous deck, which I have received from Kyle. His name is Kyle. He's an American. And Kyle has not only sent me this deck, but he has also sent me the spirit cloth, which you might have seen in a few of my favorite or previous videos. And so Kyle works in a corporate environment currently, as far as I know, although we have done a few readings on him wanting to find his passion and wanting to reconnect with his artistic side or style. And he is also a tarot reader. He's very knowledgeable of the tarot, so when I gave him a reading, he already was, pretty knowledgeable of the meanings of the cards. And his feedback revealed to me that he had a good and deep understanding of the tarot, which is always a plus, when I do my readings. But as far as I understand, he had received an upbringing that made it difficult for him to go deeper within his tarot studies. So instead he went down a path of, a different path. But he's a very intuitive person, and in general, I find it more exciting and more enjoyable to read to people who are intuitive themselves, because they just naturally understand what the tarot wants to say. So even if I do not express the meanings or the messages correctly, you can still tell that they understand, that they intuitively connect with the messages. Because sometimes I have a hard time formulating my thoughts, because obviously English is not my first language. And even if it were, these concepts that are expressed by the tarot are kind of hard to verbalize sometimes. So I sometimes find myself struggling with it, and that's why I like to use decks like this that are very expressive in their imagery, so that even if I'm a bit clumsy trying to convey the meanings of the cards, the illustrations are still speaking for themselves to an extent. And this is such a beautiful deck. It's so poetic and just really gorgeous. And I love how the sides are silvery and shiny. So it's a really beautiful deck. Shout out to Kyle. Kyle, if you're watching, I hope you're doing well. I hope you are on the path that you want to be on. Because I remember in our last reading, we spoke about you wanting to experiment with your life a little more. And you're kind of a freedom fighter, in a sense. So I hope that your fight for freedom is going well. Look at this, so gorgeous. The Empress. Very beautiful. I hope that you guys can see the cards well. What's your favorite deck or favorite decks? If you have any of those, please let me know in the comments. And what was your first deck, perhaps, if you are a long-time tarot reader? And this is a special card in this deck, the Fountain. It's like the Master in the Osho Zen Tarot. It's an extra card between the last and the first major arcana cards. Alright, so if you felt a connection with this deck, then your card is coming up right now. Alright, here we go. So, the card that you should be meditating on today is the Eight of Swords. And interesting because it reminds me of this concept of the freedom fighter. So if you are also someone who's fighting for their own freedom, just like Kyle is, if you're trying to break away from these old, outdated patterns that you're perhaps bringing with you from your upbringing, please remember that the enemy is on the inside. So the real enemy is the mind that is putting you down, that is making you feel less than, that is making you feel like you're not worthy or that you are not capable of change. Swords are connected with the element of air. So, the element of thinking. You need to understand, and you should be meditating on the concept of this negative, judgmental voice within you that is your true obstacle to freedom. You have gotten so used to this voice within your mind that you perhaps even identify yourself with it. But this card is here to tell you that these swords that are pointing at you, they are illusory. They are just in your mind. The only threat is your own lack of faith and your own harsh criticism of yourself. All right, and the last deck that I want to show you is my most recently acquired deck. I'm not sure if that's the right word because it was a gift. And Eddie, my supporter, Patreon supporter, and longtime subscriber, Eddie, has sent it to me. It's called the Santa Muerte Tarot, and this is a very, very special deck because, well, first of all, it is an interesting deck in and of itself. The concept is, this, what is it called in Spanish? It's the Day of the Dead. Dia de los Muertos, maybe. Sorry if I just butchered that. But anyway, so the concept behind this deck is that, first of all, life is finite, and it's just a Memento Mori kind of philosophy that permeates the entire concept of this deck. And there's skulls and skeletons and bones everywhere on each card. And the other thing is that it has this coffin-shaped box, which makes it limited edition. And it comes with this, see? It's 1135. That's the copy number. And so it's a very special deck. And I'm gonna show them to you, the cards. Oh, and the back. Look at this. It is just so eerie, but also so cool. I have a good friend who's about to move to Mexico in a few months. And I am also kind of attracted to that country, to that area. And maybe one day I'm gonna be living there. Or maybe some South American country. I just love the philosophy of this deck, of death being something to be made fun of and to have fun with, instead of feeling devastated by. So it's just such a much more healthy and I feel natural way of approaching death. You can just feel that there's a deep level of understanding and acceptance behind it. It is what it is, and we need to remember that we are going to die. Memento Mori. Remember death. So it is a harsh reality that you need to be aware of, but it's a concept that should not depress you. It should not make it impossible for you to enjoy your life. If anything, it's a fun concept to play around with. And the death card is very special. It's called Santa Muerte. So what do you think about this deck? Does it creep you out? Do you like it? Just so eerily gorgeous. The Wheel of Fortune. Wow. So, do you have any interesting, customs or any type of folklore narratives in your country that relates to death? If you do, can you please leave a comment? I'd love to hear about it. Or is it a taboo subject in your country? What's the attitude, the cultural attitude towards death? In my country, in Hungary, it's kind of a taboo subject. We don't often talk about it, but it's not a complete taboo either. And I think Hungarians have a very kind of dark sense of humor, which helps us cope with difficult things. We've had quite an unpleasant history, to tell you the truth, and and older generations have gone through a lot. 2 world wars, being oppressed by the Nazis and then being part of the Soviet Union. People tend to be bitter in my country, and they have just a very very kind of numb state of being when it comes to death. They are just kind of apathetic. There's a lot of apathy, there's a lot of indifference, closed hearts. But it is what it is. And younger generations are already recovering from some of the suffering and the trauma that older generations had to deal with. So if you were connecting with this deck, here's your card. The 2 of Pentacles. The 2 of Pentacles. So interesting. The butterfly theme is also a symbolic element that runs through this deck. The 2 of Pentacles is about change. Accepting death is very similar to accepting change in our lives, especially changes that manifest on a material level. So this card is asking you to meditate on the ephemeral nature of material things and circumstances. And it's also asking you to let go and just go with the flow. Because death of things is even more common than death of people. So throughout your lifetime, you'll experience the death and the birth of many situations and many relationships and many material things. And that's how you get trained. That's how you get used to the idea of death. That's how you prepare for when your time comes. So try to ease into it. Just go with it. The natural ebb and flow of life. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a nice day or night.